Hello and welcome to part one of the Sincronia tutorial. In this part of the Sincronia tutorial, we're going to go over how to set up Sincronia on your own instance and on your personal machine. As you can see in this diagram, there are two components to Sincronia that are important to know about. One is the Sincronia client, which you can see here. The Sincronia client will be installed on your local machine, and it'll be used to connect to the Sincronia Scoped app, which we're going to install on your ServiceNow instance. When you have both of these components installed, you can connect to any Scoped app in your instance and interface with the code via Sincronia. So what is Sincronia? Sincronia is a way to take code from ServiceNow and pull it into your local machine, and then use various developer tools to build and transform your code and push the results back into ServiceNow. It enables a lot of cool modern development processes and workflows, but for now we're just going to show you how to get a really basic setup going. The first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go to these instructions here and look at the requirements. So you see here, to use Sincronia, you're going to need Node.js version 12 or later. It's possible that you have Node.js installed, but it may not be on the right version. The way you can check that is by opening up a terminal and typing node-version. You can see here I'm running version 12.6.0. If you don't have Node.js installed, this won't work, and you'll have to install it from here. So the latest version should work for Sincronia. If you're on Windows, you're going to need to do some additional setup. Sincronia relies on a Unix-style terminal like you see here. Macs and Linux operating systems will come with a terminal out of the box. But for Windows, you'll need to install either the Windows subsystem for Linux or have a Linux VM installed on your machine. And that is because the Windows command line or PowerShell don't really play well with Sincronia, and it's better to have a Unix terminal available. Once you have those set up, we're going to be ready to get started setting up Sincronia. So I'm going to move this over here. So the first thing we need to do is create a folder for our scoped app code to live once we pull it down with Sincronia. So we're going to do make dir, and I'm just going to call mine demo, and I'm going to cd into demo. Once I'm in here, I need to run npm init. What this command does is it sets up a npm module for you to work with. In this case, your scoped app is going to be an npm module. You can answer these questions however you like. However, for this demo purpose, I'm just going to speed through them. And now that I have that command finished, I have a npm module set up. So you can see here I have a package.json file in here, which is going to keep track of my modules that I'm going to install in order to set up Sincronia. So in order to set that up, I need to do npm install -D at Sincronia/core. Okay, so now if I do another ls in here, you'll see that I have a node modules folder now. And if I go into node modules, there's a lot of things in here, but you'll see for sure that there is one folder called @Sincronia, which is going to contain our core module that we just downloaded. Next thing we need to do is set up our ServiceNow instance. So in here, I've got my ServiceNow instance. In the instructions, it says I need to import the scoped app. So if I click this link, I get a ServiceNow scoped app. I'm going to copy this URL from GitHub, and then I'm going to open up Studio. And I'm going to import an application from source control. And I need to take my GitHub credentials in here. And it'll start to pull the Sincronia scoped app from source control. So you can see I've got that there. The next thing I'm going to do is create my own scoped app. You could use an existing one in your case, but since this is an instance without any scoped apps, I'm going to create my own. I'm just going to call mine demo app. And now I've got this demo app available, which I'm going to switch to. And I'm just going to create some example files in here. I'm going to create script includes here. So wait for it to finish loading. Okay, so that should be good. So now I've got a mock scoped app installed. So we're ready to continue with our instructions. So at this point, we've got both our Sincronia client installed and our Sincronia scoped app. So now we just need to get them configured. So we've already installed Sincronia core. So the next thing we need to do is run npx sync init. Move that up a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. Right there. And it's going to ask me what instance I want to connect to. So in this case, you can connect to this instance. And I have to give it my username and my password. It's going to ask me which app I'd like to work with. I'm going to say demo app. So I'm going to hit enter. You can use the arrow keys to go between these. And it says it downloaded and it's ready to go. So if I open up VS Code, let's take a look at what we got here. So it looks like we created a bunch of files here. We still have our node modules and our package JSON, but we have some new files now. We've got a sync config.js, which seems pretty simple right now. A sync manifest.json, which normally you're not going to edit this, but it's nice to know that it exists. It keeps track of all your files in ServiceNow. And we have this SRC folder, which has a folder for every table in my scoped app. So this one is syscrypt include, and you can see I've got test1 and test2, my two script includes as actual local code, which is pretty cool. And one other file here is this .env file. So if you look inside of this, you'll see that it's got an entry for your username, your password, and the instance that we're connecting to. So when we eventually commit this to Git, you don't want to put this file in here. It's just for your own personal use. Okay, so what next? We pulled our code out of our scoped app, and we want to edit it now. So if I were to open up a terminal in here and run npx sync dev, it starts my dev mode. So what does that do? Dev mode watches for changes in my ServiceNow files, and every time I change something, it will push that change into ServiceNow. So if I were to go here and type a comment and save my file, you'll see that you'll get a little summary here of what happened. It pushed test2 into ServiceNow. So if I were to check ServiceNow, you'll see there's my comment that I just made. So that's pretty cool. I'm able to push files from my local development environment into ServiceNow. Now, what if I create like a new file in here and I want to use that? Well, it's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and create one and find out. If I open up Sincronia, my Sincronia directory, you'll see that I don't have a test3 in here yet. So to get that down here into my local development environment, I'm going to run npx sync refresh. When I do that, you see here's test3. Okay, so now we've got our Sincronia client connected to our Sincronia server and our scoped app. We're able to write changes to files and download any new files from Sincronia. And let's see what else is there to know. So for right now, what we learned is if I want to create a new file, a new script in ServiceNow, I have to create it in ServiceNow first. That's important to know because that is always how Sincronia works. Even if we configure it with new configurations, that's how it works. It doesn't create files from your local development environment into ServiceNow, and that's just how it works. There's a lot of reasons why we decided to do that, but that goes outside the scope of this tutorial. So the last thing I want to do is get this set up in GitHub. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that only the right files get committed to GitHub. For example, this file that contains my password, I don't want to commit that to GitHub. And I don't want to commit these node modules to GitHub either, because someone else can just download those on their own by doing npm install. So I'm going to create a file called .getignore. I'm going to add node modules and .env. Save that. And what that means is when I run git in here and when I push my code up to GitHub, my .env and my node modules will be ignored. So if I go to GitHub, create a new repo, I'm going to run this code from GitHub in my terminal. And it'll set up a Git repository, and it says, oh, I've got a bunch of files here that I haven't committed. So I'm going to commit those. And then I'm going to push. Okay, so if we go to GitHub now, refresh. There you go. I've got my my Sincronia project pushed into GitHub and available for other people to collaborate with me. So that's the basic setup. We've got our client, our server, our GitHub repo, and we can save files into ServiceNow. In the next part of this tutorial, we're going to go over how we can use Sincronia to use more modern workflows like modern JavaScript and eventually TypeScript.